So I've been using the iPhone X for about 3 weeks now, and I got the chance to really use the phone thoroughly to see just how the experience is compared to other smartphones, especially because of the lack of home button. So the iPhone X has been redesigned now with glass on the back and a stainless steel band going around the device, which gives you much better grip compared to previous iPhones. Now, I've never really put too much thought into what color my phone is, but it actually took me quite a while trying to decide which one is better here. With the silver color option, you get a smoother feeling steel band along with the white back that really shows off the vertical camera so people know that it's an iPhone X. But on the other hand, the black band around the phone just blends in so nicely with the black bezels, but the texture feels slightly off here. There's a slightly different feel with the space gray mold that actually gives it better grip compared to the smoother silver. Personally, I prefer the space gray iPhone X a little bit more simply because it just blends so nicely all around, and they also both show fingerprints just as easily, so I'm not really liking the silver here. Now, one of the biggest new features with the iPhone X are the shrunken top and bottom bezels. They are much smaller than before and the screen just goes right up to the edges. And because the screen reaches all the way to the top and bottom, Apple had to fit the earpiece, the camera, and the new sensors in a little cutout at the very top of the display. Frankly, I never really noticed the notch. It's just tucked away at the very top while my eyes are looking at the center of the display checking out memes on Reddit. The only time I notice the notch is during landscape video while zoomed in. Personally, I watch videos zoomed out so I'm not losing anything vertically, and even when I have the video zoomed in, the notch only bothers me for about the first 10 seconds, and then I'm too busy focusing on what's happening in the video. Unless the video is boring though, then the notch is always bothering me. This year, Apple packed in a much larger battery into the iPhone X, so it feels a lot heavier than you would imagine a phone of this size would weigh. It's not heavy per se because the iPhone 8 Plus is still heavier than the 10, but if you're coming from something like an iPhone 6, this will definitely feel heavier than before, and that's because of the new 2700 mAh battery. It's got the same capacity as the 8 Plus, but because it has a larger display as well as the true depth camera constantly checking to see if I'm looking at the screen before turning it off, I'm getting slightly less battery than the 8 Plus. I'm still getting a full 8 hours of usage through a normal day like on the 8 Plus, so I'm not really worried there. But the thing that really bugs me is the battery icon. It always has this sort of illusion of making your battery appear lower than it actually is because there's a gap around the icon, so it makes the empty part appear bigger than it really is. Eventually, I kind of just started to ignore the battery icon altogether because I know the phone is going to make it through a full day, but Apple definitely needs to give us more customizability with the status bar. The camera on the iPhone X is fantastic. The usual upgrades like faster autofocus, better colors, and wider dynamic range are all there, but I got a chance to really test out the iPhone X's front-facing portrait with a couple different people for different hairstyles and lighting conditions, and here's what I found. So with the first 3 lighting options, those tend to work best in well-lit environments. Studio lighting works great most of the time, but if the lighting wasn't very good to begin with, like for example if the person is wearing a hat, then it's not going to do much to correct it. With stage light, that tends to work best in darker environments. I tried a whole bunch of different places like on a sunny day, on a cloudy day, inside a dark room with a flat gray background, as well as outside under a bridge on a cloudy day, and it seems like it's really just about luck. Most of the time you'll get some weird edges and it just doesn't really blend well with a pure black background, but when it does work, it looks pretty cool. Now, I'm not really a selfie person, I kinda just don't like pictures of myself taken, but I did find myself really enjoying the camera even 3 weeks into using it. The best part is that if you don't get the shot that you want, you can always either change the lighting option or you can disable the portrait blurring after you've already taken the shot to just get a nice regular photo. Now with that new true depth camera system, the way that you make purchases has also changed. So before you would simply have to rest your finger on the home button to verify Touch ID, but now you actually have to double click the side button before Face ID recognizes you. Probably because you wouldn't want to accidentally confirm a purchase simply by looking at your phone, but I wish Apple would have just put a button on the screen that says pay because double clicking the side button just feels unintuitive. Now, speaking of Face ID, it's actually a lot better and way more useful than I initially thought. It does a lot more than just unlocking your phone, and they're actually surprisingly useful. So if you have an alarm, a timer, or a phone call that's ringing your phone, you can look at the phone to make it quieter. It doesn't fully silence it, but it does get a lot quieter. There's also an option within Face ID and passcode settings for attention aware features, so for those of you with a short 30-second timeout before your screen automatically turns off, now it won't turn off if you're looking at your phone. Now as far as Face ID itself is concerned, it is slower than using a fingerprint sensor, and in all honesty, I much prefer Touch ID simply because all I need to do is press the home button and I'm immediately brought to the home screen. But if Apple gives us the option to have Face ID automatically skip a lock screen the moment it verifies my face, I'll be a happy man. It's not a big deal having to swipe up to unlock, but when Apple introduced Rest to unlock with the fingerprint sensor, it made a world of difference for me, so hopefully Apple brings that to Face ID. Setting it up is also pretty easy, but it's definitely awkward to do in public. While I was recording the setup process for Face ID, which by the way was shot on another iPhone X at 4K 60 frames per second so you can judge the quality yourself, I had to use the passcode throughout the next couple of hours because I just wasn't about to turn my head in a circle twice in a row in front of a bunch of people. But yeah, not as quick as Touch ID, but if Apple lets us bypass lock screen automatically once Face ID verifies my face, I'll be happy man. I think the biggest change with the iPhone X are the new gestures for navigating the phone. I got used to everything within a couple hours, so the learning curve really isn't an issue, but the control center took me a couple of days to really get used to. Personally, I think having the control center in the bottom corners beside the home bar would be ideal because you still have plenty of space for the home gesture, and it just feels way more intuitive than putting it in the top right corner, which is especially annoying for left-handed people. Aside from that though, I much prefer the new gestures versus the home button, especially with the side swipe. It's incredibly quick and easy to switch between your recently used applications. Which leads me to the app switcher requiring you to hold down on the card before you can kill the app. The thing with the side swipe is that it only switches between apps in the app switcher, so if you're someone who constantly kills all of their open applications, you won't be able to side swipe. Now, one last thing I want to mention before I close off this video, and I found this pretty amusing, but I went around and asked two people who had an iPhone 8 Plus why they didn't go with the iPhone X, and both of them said that the X was too expensive. The funny part is that they actually had 256GB iPhones, which in Canada cost $14.21, but the 64GB iPhone X costs $14.75, so you're only paying $55 more for the X compared to the 8 Plus. Now, yes, I am comparing a 64 and 256GB iPhone, so it's not a completely fair comparison, but I'm still curious why they need 256GB of storage if $1,400 is a lot to them. So should you buy the smartphone? If you have the cash to drop and money just isn't an issue, then yeah, I think you're going to enjoy it. Personally, I think it's a fantastic phone, and while Face ID is slower than Touch ID and Apple Pay just got a little more tedious, that's about all I can criticize in my normal day-to-day use. It's got great build quality, fantastic display and speakers, great cameras, as well as an all-day battery life. So that about wraps up this review of the iPhone X. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, a like would be much appreciated. This is Infinity Labs, and we'll catch you guys later.